On one of the previous episodes, we had mentioned this cool looking JRPG style RPG, turn based RPG, I should say, called Terra Memoria. Now, you've played a little bit of it, and so I wanted to. What do you think so far? How is the game? And you're playing on the PlayStation 5. How does it play on the strong hardware that I'm
Mhm.
guessing it probably doesn't need?
Yeah. So yeah, I put about like 2 hours into it today,
Nice.
and it is for those who maybe didn't see the last episode or are not sure of what this game is.
Yeah.
It's a an RPG, turn-based RPG, and it kind of has this like pseudo uh, HD 2D look. That was something that I had mentioned in our previous episode about it, and I say it's a pseudo look because it's not like exactly like HD 2D. HD 2D being the kind of look that a game like Octopath Traveler goes for, where it's very kind of stylized pixel art. This game does have pixel art sprites, but a lot of the environments are kind of like regular 3D models and stuff like that. And then they have this sort of like tilt shift, like the foreground and the background are blurred kind of things,
Right.
kind of a look going on for it. But it's like a fantasy themed RPG, and it's pretty fun so far. It's it's a little bit on the easier side from an RPG that I would have played. Like I don't play many turn-based RPGs, but I've put some time into a couple of them. And so far this game has a lot of mechanics that kind of, how do I want to say it? Like it has a lot of mechanics that make it really easy just to kind of hop in and play.
Nice.
Uh Basically like, your characters will auto heal outside of battle. So far, there's not really been like healing items that I've had to use. Um, your characters have these magic spells, more or less, that you use during combat. And as far as I can tell, there's no real like limit on them. So, like, in something like a Pokemon, for instance, your certain moves will have a certain amount of
Right.
power points that, once you run out of those, you can't use the move anymore. I haven't really run into that yet, and there's also no difficulty options
Hmm.
from what I can see. So it seems like it's just like a standard kind of difficulty throughout the game. Um, but yeah, the game so far in the 2 hours that I've played, it's been a little bit of a slower burn. It kind of starts you out, and you're sort of under siege by this group of kind of like robot insects almost, and they have like a couple of battles here and there, and then you're kind of like exploring this city environment and going and talking to people and completing like I won't say they're like fetch quests, but it's like little miscellaneous quests that have you darting around to different parts of the city and all
Yeah.
that. Um, but the combat is definitely what interests me the most about it. Um, I'm not sure if they are the first game to do this or not, but certainly the first game that I've played that has this sort of a mechanic where it has a timeline on the bottom of the battle screen.
Oh, I saw
And
this, and it's like as the battle goes on, you can see how many, like a physical way of like where turns are. Um,
yeah,
yeah. That I thought that was like a really handy feature for people like me because it shows you, and you know, it shows you like where, if after a certain attack, where you'll then attack next, so that you can kind of
mhm.
coordinate your attacks really kind of cleverly if you have the brains for it.
Yeah, so it basically like it'll show like on this timeline like the enemy's positions on the timeline and your party's placements on the timeline, like you were saying, and different moves depending on their strength will set you further back in the timeline for your next turn.
Ah,
So basically, like if you want to use a weaker attack, it might throw you like 5 places down the timeline. So you can theoretically get more of those attacks off. Or if you want to use a stronger attack, it'll put you like 8 paces down.
gotcha.
So you kind of have some decision making on how you want to play out in the battle with the moves that you have.
Hmm.
The interesting thing though that I found in the early game is that enemies, they have a little shield rating, and basically once you break their shield, it will automatically send that enemy to the end of the timeline.
Hmm.
And you sort of in games like Pokemon or Persona, there's also these elemental weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it'll show like on the HUD, what type of elemental attack like an enemy would be weak to.
Hmm.
And whenever you break their shields, you will, like I said, you'll send them back to the end of the timeline, and it'll open them up to all types of elemental damage. So basically, you get this really nice bonus of like sending them as far back as possible in their turns. So you get some good follow up attacks after that. Plus, they're weak to like everything else.
Right.
So
Right. I can see. I can
it's
see
a
what you're saying.
pretty satisfying little kind of loop they have. Like I said, it hasn't really been terribly too hard or all that complex yet, but the stuff is there even in the early game where I could see, if there's like a lot of enemies on screen, they all have different weaknesses, your party only has certain moves equipped or whatever. I can see how the difficulty could probably start to ramp up a little bit later on. But so
Sure.
far, like I said, like even I did like one of the first main like what I'm assuming is a boss fight. It gave the impression of a boss and kind of came at the end of an area. um Even that one, it was just like, I had to maybe like stop and heal a character once, but for the most part, like it was, not too challenging.
And I know
um
you're in the early game, but so there's no like, because for me this game reminded me of Sea of Stars, and one of the things that when I reviewed the game, I had praised that game about was that it had a lot of these relics and stuff that made the game a lot more accessible. So it was essentially like what you're describing that Terra Memoria is kind of by default, seemingly, is how I played Sea of Stars with like the relics on. So I'm wondering, is there like any sort of relic system where like it makes the game harder in this case, like like kind of more like uh I guess disadvantages that kind of test you.
yeah. I haven't run into any yet. I think there is kind of like a gameplay modifying system. I've collected a couple of these uh like lapel pins,
Hmm.
and I think they do modify gameplay. I just haven't gotten to an area where I can actually like equip those or like,
I see.
see, like I'm not sure if it's just like if I can only go to like a certain location or there is a like a camp mechanic. I didn't really see in those menus if I was able to equip those. So I've gotten a couple,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure if any of them directly like make it harder on you or if it's more so a thing that's like, oh, you have, more armor or things like that to like benefit your
Right.
party. Um, the camp is actually something that I also wanted to mention because it had an interesting element to it where basically as you're in combat and stuff, you're gaining XP, but I wasn't leveling up at all.
Hmm.
And whenever I came to the first camp, it basically banks all the XP you would have earned from those battles at that moment. So basically, whenever I got to my first camp, I leveled up like 5 or 6 times
Oh,
from all
interesting.
the XP. So I'm not sure if there's like a mechanic yet that like maybe if you die with your XP, if it's almost like a soulsy kind of thing where
Oh,
you drop your XP. Like I said, I haven't
you
been in
gotta
that
die on
situation, so
purpose. You
that
gotta die on purpose
yeah,
for
I
research.
I gotta I gotta test it later. But yeah, it was another one of those kind of like satisfying little things where it's like, hey, you set up your camp, you're getting ready, to tweak a couple things with your build, but then you just get like, a ton of XP, leveling up your character.
you
So
know
far, that's only
the
really, I think, from what I saw, it affected like your health, your damage, and like your defense. I
uh
think were stats that bumped up, but
the
yeah, it
thing
was just
that
like
when I
a
was
cool
looking at the
thing.
game, the there's a lot of words used to describe games to kind of get you to be like, hey, this game may be something that catches my eye. The one that I thought was interesting for this game was that it was cozy. Would you describe this as a cozy game, Nick, in the first 2 hours?
Um, I laugh because this is not an indictment of the quality of the game or not, but because you phrased the question like that. While I was playing, the music is very soft
Mm-hmm.
and it's very laid back and I was like starting to like almost nod off a little bit. Like I said, this isn't like an indictment of the game. Like it's completely fine and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But like I was like I
So
just
it
started
is
like
cozy.
it was lulling me in. So from a certain point of view, yes, I could say that it is It is a cozy game, and maybe that is, part of the decision making behind me not making it super challenging. Maybe it is more so supposed to be like a more laid back RPG experience. Which, if that's the case, I mean, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think that there would be really any, these games don't need to constantly like tear you down and chew you up and spit you out. But
And that's the
yeah, that's
thing
just
for
something that I
me.
noticed.
As someone who like, that's always how it's always been. Like, I'll try to go back and be like, oh, I'm gonna play these games that I haven't played before, and these kind of older turn-based JRPGs or something like that, or inspired by that. And I always get my ass handed to me in these games, and that's why it was so nice when I played through Sea of Stars, and I was like, oh, I was able to do it, and that's why I was like, reading this, I was like, it's kind of like, I mean, they describe it like this is like a cozy a road trip almost, and I mean, here it literally says, Terra Memoria embodies the holy trinity of the three C's: cute, cozy, and chill. Yeah, so that's really what caught my eye, and I'm glad it almost put you to sleep, Nick. But
Yeah, it
go ahead.
now that you say that, like that definitely makes a lot more sense based on what I've played. It's definitely not in your face. It's not like super like hardcore or anything. The
Right.
systems are pretty chill, like it's like it described. And
Hmm.
what one like really tiny thing that I like about it is, you know how when you're playing something like a Pokemon and you beat a Pokemon and it says like they fainted or
Yeah.
whatever. When the creatures die in this game, it's phrased as they bit the dust, and I really
I
like
like that.
that.
Yeah. But yeah, that was all about Terra Memoria. First impressions from Nick. That's from developer Le Motrade. I really apologize if I like said a curse word or something that I didn't know how to pronounce. But it is a French indie game studio, and the game Terra Memoria is out now on PC, Xbox Series XS, PS5, and Nintendo Switch, wherever your gaming home resides.